What was the wildest way you found out you were being cheated on? My entire friend group knew about it, and I only found out after the one real homie blackmailed her into admitting it. And when she did, it was the most insincere ever. It's no big deal, everyone else thinks it's okay, and stuff like that. Suffice to say, I got my out of that relationship and friendship group real quick. For the record, if I know a friend is being cheated on, I believe it's my moral responsibility to share what information I have with them. I personally believe that folks looking the other way or playing ignorant is its own form of deception and isn't morally excusable. Imagine if it was universally considered unjustifiable to keep this secret on someone else's behalf. If everyone who found out about a cheater felt compelled to tell, it could result in fewer people engaging in the behavior period, or at minimum would prevent them from getting away with it for so long or so easily. A world where it's harder to deceive someone is a better world to live in. People will say things like, "It's really none of my business," or "I shouldn't get involved," but I think these positions are excuses and attempts to justify inaction. The only time I would ever say it's morally excusable to keep information like this from someone is if sharing it would put yourself or them at risk of physical harm. I'll just cling on to this one since mine's similar-ish. It was with one of my best friends at the time. We were all part of sort of a big friend group and everyone knew, including people who did not even know me or the dude I was dating at the time very well, and they all knew for weeks or months, and no one thought it necessary to tell me. At some point, one of my other friends did tell me. Apparently the girl-friend had confessed to them in secret. I confronted the dude who basically told me she is not even his type and actually managed to convince me. I was 17 at the time. The girl promised to my face that nothing had happened, was happening, and nothing would ever happen. I chose to believe them. But the friend that had told me the first time said he rechecked with her and he was 100% sure they did sleep with each other. I ended up going through his phone for proof. He didn't really have an excuse. Her excuse for lying was that we were supposed to go to a concert together the week after. She didn't want to up our relationship before that. Oh my God, I had a similar scenario. My friends and I would gather for game night and my girlfriend was a part of our group. A new guy had joined our group recently who was a friend of one of the other members. He blatantly said out loud to everyone the day I was missing that he liked my girlfriend and was going to pursue her. My girlfriend was there to hear it. He knew we were dating. They told him good luck with that since she's dating me. Yet, no one told me, not my girlfriend, not any of my friends. I found out she was cheating down the road and confided in one of the other guys who I was closest with, and he told me everything and just said sorry. He then got upset with me when I stopped being his friend and dropped all of that group. Her parents told me. My ex-fiancé was living with his parents while we searched for a shared apartment. A mutual friend of ours would occasionally crash at his house after a late night out. They had lots of bedrooms, and I wasn't worried about her because she was married. His mom woke up to take the dogs out in the middle of the night once and accidentally walked in on them having on the couch. His mom called me the next day and let me know. I was super glad to find out before the wedding and before signing a year-long apartment lease. Dodged a bullet there. Thanks, almost mother-in-law. The weird part was he ended up engaged to her later down the road, and they had the exact same destination wedding he and I had been planning together. I don't think she had a clue. My ex's parents invited me to meet them for dinner and a few drinks when my then fiancé was supposed to be out of town. She was at the place with another guy she had been cheating with for months. Her dad and I were close, and he wouldn't allow this. He was there to keep it from escalating. Mom didn't come. I couldn't believe it. The ex was absolutely furious with Dad, but shocked to see me. I thanked her father and left. Never spoke to her again, although she tried. Wasted 2 years of my life, but was very thankful to her parents for the people they were and saving me from a huge mistake. She's been married 3 times last I heard. Date night canceled day of. I decided to make it a guy's night to see the new Marvel movie at the time. As we entered, I saw her sitting at the theater snuggling up with a guy. Our seats were a few rows back. Saw them kiss a couple times. When we all left at the end of the movie, they were exiting their aisle as we walked down the stairs. She absolutely froze when she saw me. Blocked her on everything while I'm in parking lot. Invited her to go see Candyman. Had to reschedule twice so it fit better for her schedule. Her work shifts varied. day of I text her and hear nothing back about going. I've been wanting to see this movie for a while at this point, so I go to the agreed upon time anyway because I already planned to. Sat down only to see about 3 seats to my right on the same row, her cuddled up with another dude. She demanded to read all the messages on my phone. I said no problem, but only if I could read the messages on hers. She had forgotten to delete a message from a guy saying, "All we ever do is, can't we hang out sometime?" There was nothing on my phone. Mine came to visit me at college and she worked in the area. She dropped her stuff off and went to work for the day. She had been acting squirrely for weeks and I went into her Facebook account and checked her messages. Not my proudest moment. 4 different dudes she was sleeping with. Incriminating messages to say the least. She didn't have her phone on her at work, so I had to wait 5 hours to even get in contact with her. I told her I was gonna meet her in the parking lot and throw her in her car and she could leave. Of course, we sat in her car for an hour while she cried and denied it and said they were just messages. I just shrugged and told her I do not and will not believe her. One of her friends was a photographer and wanted to do tasteful nudes, which apparently includes penetration and multiple days of getting the right shot. We had a shared Google Drive, which her friend didn't know we shared. Your story reminded me of a past ex. Her female friend was a photographer and she had a very intimate photo session with her. Not nude, but pretty damn close. She had told me about this beforehand and I wasn't really for it. The style of the shoot was not really my taste. They were trashy IMO, but I wasn't going to stop her. She got very upset when I questioned what they were for if they weren't for her current lover. Turns out they were for her ex, who she was seeing on and off for our entire relationship. My 9-year-old son told me that there were strange men in the house when I was away working. She'd been at it for years. It's horrible to deal with at the time, but honestly, it's such a relief to be rid of such a toxic mess. My cousin told his dad that his boys out leader was spending the night most nights. Uncle worked overnights. Ex-aunt thought the kids didn't know because he snuck in late. She also let her parents believe that he cheated on her until the kids explained to them a couple years later what really happened, because ex-aunt's parents lived in same town as my family and grandpa, and they were going out of their way to make sure we couldn't see the kids when they visited with mom. My ex-wife was so toxic I was relieved, possibly overjoyed to have an excuse to end it, and I know in her head that justified her actions even more. It took months to really hit me on what she did and how much she lied about, and to truly be angry about it. Most breakups have had a lingering sadness that it ended at all, but this one was just pure hurt and anger, nothing I truly miss about it, and it was the longest and deepest one I've had. She tasted like smoke, but was a non-smoker. My sister-in-law just started dating a smoker. Dude, I can't believe that used to be a super common thing. He smells so bad I could barely stand to give him a ride in my car one time. She doesn't smell great either since dating him. It makes me laugh that smoking jackets were a thing in the past. How TF did smokers delude themselves into thinking a jacket would block that smell? I was married. I was young ass, so that's my dumb fault. She came home from work and always mentioned how her and her coworkers used Snapchat to talk or take pictures around the facility. But every time she came home it was logged off. I didn't care. I never really had a reason to not trust her, but did find it suspicious. Anyways, one day she got home from work and I was in the mood. We got into it and tried going down on her. Her smelled like condom. Like she had just got her cheeks blown and the rubbery smell of the condom lingered. I put my away and never again was our relationship the same. Her other boyfriend, who I didn't know existed, and I had a mutual friend who put 2 and 2 together and told me. I said I wanted to meet him, so he called him over. We talked out some things and then called her together at my suggestion. Good times were had by all. Hanging at a friend's house one day when a guy knocked on the door. Friend answered. The guy asked him if he'd been screwing Becky. Friend said, "Yeah, she's my girlfriend. We do that." Guy immediately started swinging. All hell broke loose, and in the 2 minutes they fought before we could rip them apart, they beat the hell out of each other. While calming down and yelling at each other, they somehow came to the mutual agreement that it was ridiculous that they were fighting over her when it was obvious she was the one in the wrong. I'm leaving out the whole revenge story, but the best moment was when she went out with one of them, got so drunk she passed out. He took her to the other guy's apartment and they put her on his couch. The guy that lived there said it was all he could do not to fall over laughing the next morning when she woke up and was trying to figure out if she'd actually gone out with him the night before, and it was just all mixed up in her head. He was drunk at his 21st, and while joking around with his friends, he started listing off all the women he'd slept with in the last year. I was standing right there, and we'd been dating for 2 years at that point. That's awful. I cannot imagine how humiliating that was. It's bad enough he did see the other women, but if I had a friend humiliate their soul like that in public, I'd be done them. I hope his friends were done with him. My typing is so off today, English looks like a third language. Not me, but my dad. His girlfriend at the time had been cheating on him with his friend, who didn't know they were in a relationship. My dad found out when his friend told him he was gonna propose to her. I'm gay, and wasn't out of the closet to any of my co-workers at the time. My girlfriend at the time, obviously ex now, came in to say hi at work. I introduced her to a co-worker as my best friend, and they hit it off and became friends. They hung out and went to a movie together and ended up kissing a few times. Of course, she immediately told him to not tell me about it. I'm not sure the reason why she gave him, but the next day he was really happy and excited about it and told me anyways. I had to then come out to him in that moment and at the same time tell him that she was lying to him. It was so awkward, and I did not want to be pulled out of the closet like that. But I do have to say, he was really respectful of it. Apologized a ton, said he had no idea, broke things off with her and then blocked her on everything. And actually he and I became pretty close after that. I unfortunately didn't learn my lesson and was still with her for a bit, but did end up leaving her once I learned she was dating another girl behind my back later too. Not really wild, but my ex-wife and I owned a small business together. One day I noticed a strange email address on the office computer, her first name and a different last name. I realized that email was still logged in, so I took a peek. I found 2 years worth of emails between my ex and some dude she dated before me. So I printed out every email and had it bound in a binder ready to present to my divorce lawyer. I had a chick I dated in the army call me some 6 years later, tried to flirt with me. Then she got hushed, and I then realized she was married and her husband had heard some of what she was saying. I think she just bounces from dude to dude. Broke up with me, and as I was going though deleting her socials, I noticed a post she made on her Snap story that was her and a guy with a post saying, "With my king." Post was made 2 hours ago and had only broke up an hour ago. My boyfriend was deployed to Afghanistan and I thought we broke up because he said this isn't working. He texted me a week later saying we should break up, and I was like, thanks for the reminder, bro. That same day, I noticed a post he was tagged in by some 18-years-old girl. We were 23 and she was like, "I'm truly spoiled," holding like 40 red long stem roses, tagged a week prior. I texted him and said, "How long?" And he said a few weeks. Such bull, honestly. Like he cheated on me before his deployment, so for months he'd been cheating and acting like I was the problem. Big eye roll. Made some cool art out of the breakup though, so that's chill, I guess. I was visiting a dying relative in hospital, so could not attend some stupid college party he and his roommate organized. I told him I couldn't go and asked him if he could come over later after visiting hours in the hospital because I knew my relative would die soon and I really just needed someone to be there with me. He said he probably wouldn't be able to, as he needed to help his roommate with party preparations, but would come over later if they finish early. Next day, I saw pictures of him with his ex in his lap kissing, uploaded the previous night by his roommate. The roommate even knew we were dating. He was just too drunk to realize he added me as a friend a week earlier on Facebook, and I would see the pictures. I went on a 2-week holiday, and when I returned, he was acting really strange. I tried to ask him what was wrong and why he was acting off. He started an argument with me, told me I was too young and insecure, asked me to leave, didn't want to see me again. I left sobbing, totally confused. 9 months later, I see him walking through the city with his ex and a newborn baby. Now I understand. I was 18 and he was older, so of course I was smitten. It stung at the time, but I got over it. It's a funny story I tell at the bar every now and then. He did me such a favor. I'd have probably got stuck in my hometown if I'd stayed with him. Life is so short, throw yourself at it and appreciate every feeling you get. Was married. It happened a week or so after my 2 weeks R&R was in the middle of a 12-month deployment to Iraq. Long story short, I hadn't cheated on her, but I sure as hell got diagnosed with a STD a week or so after I returned back to Iraq. We finalized our divorce a couple of months later while I was still deployed. I knew a guy that married a girl. They were Mormon. They had a temple wedding and saved for marriage. She gave him an STI within a week of their wedding. He went to the doctor and he was young and a little naive. The doctor had to explain to him that the only way this could have happened is if one of them was ing other people. He went home and confronted her and she had been ing other people basically their whole relationship. Rough stuff. Came home off a deployment. Now ex-wife was acting really weird, but I figured it was because I had been gone for a year and everything was just taking time to get reacquainted. About 3 days after I returned, I had a notice from my unit stating my vehicle had 3 tickets at another base. We were in Germany a few hours away in the past few months. When I went in to find out what the deal was, all 3 had photos attached to them for speeding through a checkpoint. All 3 had my wife and some other guy. She was kissing him in the 3rd pic. He was driving my car. I was out with this girl I'd been with a few months. Went to a nice restaurant for dinner and stopped at a local dive later to hang with mutual friends and coworkers. I went into the men's room later to see her legs under a stall and heard a coworker's voice saying that. Left the bathroom, went directly to bartender and had her split our check and paid mine and bounced like King Tigger. Game over. My dumb loved her. My old barber shop was talking to my barber about her, and one of the other barbers overheard. We ended up finding out it was the same chick. One of my friends had a situation like this. His girlfriend was always talking about this guy that she didn't like who was obsessed with her and wouldn't leave her alone. My friend bumped into the guy at a party and it was like the 2 Spider-Man meme. You're stalking my girlfriend. No, you're stalking my girlfriend. The craziest part was there was another guy at the party who was also dating her and heard the same obsessed stalker story about them. She had like 5 or 6 boyfriends at the same time. He sent me a pic of the dog while I was away with a text that said, "Look how cute she looks." Like 3 weeks later, I went back to the photo to show a friend, and upon looking at the photo again, I noticed a pair of women's boots in the background by the door. I drove by his house in the early evening unannounced as I'd left a coat there I wanted to wear. He answered the door in just his boxers, and I could just tell by his face something was up. Then I spotted women's shoes in the hallway behind him and knew immediately they belonged to the girl he told me not to worry about. He told on himself. He randomly called me saying why I messaged his ex, and I was super confused because I never did, and told him it's a misunderstanding. I can reach out to her to explain it's not me. He got super defensive and threatened if I reached out to her we're done. I found it odd and reached out to clear my name, and she spilled saying he's been cheating on me as well as playing her and multiple other girls all at the same time. Turns out one of the girls made a fake account of me and reached out to her. Never found out who it was, but this is the one time I'm glad having a stalker worked in my favor, otherwise I would have never known, haha. We broke up, and then her best friend and best friend's husband told me that night. She had been ing a few different people but settled on one. They got married, had kids, then she cheated on him with me one night years later. I didn't know they were together. They divorced, she remarried, got divorced, and now she is on husband number 3. My favorite part is she portrays herself as an amazing Christian woman that is better than everyone because she is so Christian. My colleague had an elaborate wedding, cathedral ceremony, hundreds of guests to a guy she'd been with for years. She found out shortly afterwards he'd been cheating because they met this girl, who was his colleague and gym buddy, when they were walking in the park, and their 2 French bulldogs, who were noisy and protective, didn't bark at her at all. There was no reason for her to have met the dogs before, as she had never been to their house to her knowledge. So she snooped on his phone while he was asleep, and apparently he had been cheating for over a year. And she was pregnant, and they were opening a business together, and he was leaving as soon as he had the whole thing set up. When the dust settled, the only thing she was pissed off about was the expense they and her parents had spent on the wedding. He could have called the whole thing off and saved thousands. She didn't learn though. Her second wedding was nearly as elaborate. My fire alarm woke me up when it was low on batteries at 5 a.m. and thought it was strange that my girlfriend wasn't home yet. She was out drinking with her friend. I tried to call her, but she didn't answer. That's when I remembered that we had the friend's spare key. She lived like next house, so I went to check and my girlfriend was sleeping in her friend's bed with some guy. If the fire alarm didn't woke me, I think I wouldn't have ever known. Had one of those catching up phone calls with a girl I used to be good friends with. Told her all about my girlfriend during the conversation. The next day, I'm supposed to see my girlfriend and she cancels on me. No big deal. A couple hours later, my old friend starts texting me asking me questions about my girlfriend. She ends up telling me she's pretty sure my girlfriend is in the back seat of a car with her and that my girl's been all over her boyfriend's brother and they're all on their way to the movies now. I try calling her and texting to confront her. She calls me back and breaks up with me. The cherry on top is my girlfriend and I work together, and the guy she's cheating with is my manager. She ends up quitting not long after, but I have to work with this guy for another year before I change jobs. She basically moved him into our house. She told me it was to monitor him because he was depressed and needed help. Apparently tried to off himself by swallowing a bedsheet. I then realized that the whole depressed and needs help line was what she would use over any guy she was being suspicious with, like the one guy that she had history with who made a move on her while we were together and kept coming back into her life when he was depressed, or the guy mentioned in the shredded note I found in her nightstand talking about how she wanted to run away with him and get a surprise divorce, or the guy that she had this weird fixation with role-playing Kaliesi and Khal Drogo within online chats. All depressed, all needed her help. Once it clicked, I was done. I had just gotten home for 3 weeks summer holidays. I hadn't been home or seen my wife for a few weeks, so I was excited to get home. It was on the Saturday night, and I could sense she was awake into the small hours on her phone. I never thought anything of it, as I'd never had a reason to not trust her. At 4:30 a.m. she got up out of bed and said she was going to pick her brother up from a party. COVID lockdown had just ended, so everyone was partying. We have 2 young kids, so we didn't go out. She comes home just over an hour later and jumps into bed wearing underwear, which was the opposite of what she went to bed wearing. Married men will understand. I woke up with the kids at 7 and the whole situation didn't sit right with me. I took the dash cam footage from the car and loaded it onto the computer. There it was, clear as day. Some dude who did not look like her brother at all was thankful she came to pick him up, and they flirted in the car for a bit before dropping him off at his house. It was difficult to watch, but when I confronted her, she broke down and confessed. 2 weeks later, and the car was sold. 6 weeks after that, the house was sold. A year later, and we're divorced. It was a tough point of my life, but thank God for that dash cam. Saved me wasting more time of my life with a woman that didn't value me as much as I valued her. I've now moved on with an absolutely fantastic woman, and I have my life back.